All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. My name is Ryan Smith. I am the Wellness Program Administrator here at Georgia State University's Employee Development and Wellness Services. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so I'm always on the lookout for convenient and healthy recipes to share with you all. Before we get started, just a couple quick things. We are going to be recording today's session, so if you'd like to view it at a later time or share it with a colleague who may not have been able to attend today, we do put those recordings on our EDWS YouTube page, along with past cooking demonstrations, stretch breaks, meditation, and more. So we'll be sharing that in a follow-up email, and we encourage you to check it out. Throughout the course of today's presentation, if you've got questions, comments, anything like that, we'd love to hear it. You can use the WebEx chat feature to let us know what you're thinking or ask any questions that you may have. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be sure to address those questions. I'm joined today by my colleague, Cheryl Johnson-Ransoff, who's on the call to help troubleshoot any technical issues that may arise. So if you are experiencing audio or visual issues, please send a message to all panelists. That will ensure that Cheryl's able to see it and help troubleshoot any problems that may pop up. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So today we are going to be making loaded sweet potato fries, which sounds delicious. Also, doesn't sound particularly healthy up front, but I promise you, like all of our recipes, we are transforming this into a healthy and well-balanced dish. In fact, the nutrition profile is so balanced that you could eat a sizable portion of this as a meal, and you'd have a really nice distribution of nutrients. So don't think of this as like an appetizer or a snack. If you'd like to, you can absolutely eat a full serving of this as a meal and get a really balanced combination of carb, fat, and protein. And we'll talk about where that all comes from. But in terms of equipment today, we're going to need a cutting board and a knife, small mixing bowl, and then most of our work is going to be done on the skillet. Now, for the portion size or the recipe size I'm doing, I am using a very large skillet. If you've seen this program before, you may have seen this skillet pop up. This thing is, I think, about as big as they come for like a household size skillet. So I would encourage you to use the biggest one you have available. We are going to be sort of pushing the limits of what can fit in there because we do have 2 sweet potatoes that are going to be sliced up, and we want them to fit nicely. If you don't have a really big one, you might honestly consider using 2 burners on your stove and 2 medium-sized ones, just whatever makes it fit. We want the sweet potato pieces, which are going to be cut into these thin little strips, to have as much contact with the pan as possible. That will help them cook evenly and be nice and tasty when they come out at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have gone ahead and pre-chopped one of the sweet potatoes just for the sake of time today. Before doing that, though, I gave them a rinse and then I peeled them. Now, our goal with what we're cutting these into are pretty small, about French fry size pieces. You can aim for like a 1/4 inch if you want to get really specific with it, but just imagine what would be a nice fry size. And to the best of our ability, we want them to all be pretty equal in thickness because this gives them an equal surface area so they can cook evenly on the skillet. If you've got a really thick piece and a really thin piece, that thin piece will cook incredibly quickly, and that thick piece just might not get cooked all the way through. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. So to get started with our other sweet potato here, what we're going to do is the first cut I like to make on most irregular shaped things like this is just a cut off the side to give us a flat area to stabilize it with. You'll notice the sweet potato can kind of roll around, and that's not ideal for cutting and can even be dangerous if it rolls while you're cutting it and the knife slips a little bit. We want to avoid that. So I'll typically find a semi-stable position and just, doesn't have to be a giant cut, but make a small cut off the side, which gives us a flat surface area. It does not have to be perfectly flat all the way across the sweet potato, but this is definitely more stable and better than what we were working with before. And there are a lot of different ways to cut into these, but my next cut, honestly, what I do is I try to line it up in the center, and you may have to press a little bit to get through there, but I just like to cut the sweet potato in half because now I have these 2 very flat halves. They're not going anywhere, which makes it a lot easier to cut and just helps with safety. So from here, I'm just going to make some thin slices going from right to left here. I'm curling my fingertips under my knuckles, trying to protect that. Now, sweet potatoes can be a little tough because they are a very starchy vegetable. So if you have to sort of press with the knife and use a different cutting technique. Just make sure you're keeping your fingers out of the way. For example, all my fingers are out of the way so I can safely press down like that and not be worried about anything happening to my hand. So I ran through, and you'll get these sort of wedge-shaped pieces. Now, a lot of places serve fries that are about that size, and that's A-okay. But we're going to be cutting them a little thinner just because I want them to fit well in the skillet, and I want to make sure that they cook evenly. So I'm sort of just going back through and cutting them into thinner strips. You can eyeball them, and if you notice, like this piece is a little thick on the end, I might go and run the knife through it one more time just to sort of break that up. But that's pretty much the process. So we'll go ahead and move those to our bowl now. And then we'll continue it on this other half. Now, sweet potatoes, I think, have a really good reputation and some excellent marketing behind them of being a very healthy vegetable. And they are healthy. They are great in vitamin A, they've got potassium in them, they've got fiber in them, and they're a healthy source of carbohydrates. However, what I will note is I always like to defend the white potato in these situations. While sweet potatoes are healthy, they're not necessarily healthier than a white potato. Both of them are healthy sources of carbohydrates with fiber and potassium. Sweet potatoes have a little more vitamin A. White potatoes have a little more vitamin C in them. They're both good for you. It's all about portion control and how we prepare them. If you deep fry a white potato or a sweet potato, they're both going to be almost identical in calories. So don't think so much about sweet potato versus white potato. Think about the portion size and your cooking method, because you can absolutely enjoy both of them in your diet. Because white potatoes are delicious as well, so it's fun to mix it up and enjoy both of them. So just continuing this cutting process here, getting those nice strips, and then we will move it to our skillet. Okay, so those are nice and chopped up. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat 2 tablespoons of a cooking oil of your choice over a medium-high heat. Now, I'm using canola oil today. You're really welcome to use, again, any oil you'd like. For this particular recipe, I wouldn't really recommend olive oil just because it does not have a temperature rating that allows it to be heated to the temperature we want for this. So its smoke point is a little lower, which means if we heat it to a medium-high heat, it might start to smoke a little bit, which is not good for the oil that we're using. We want it to not be smoking, so canola oil at a higher smoke point, it's a little more heat resistant. So that's why I chose it today. But you could use soybean oil or a number of different oils. I would not recommend olive oil for this particular recipe. Great for salad dressings. You'll see me use it in a lot of things, but not today. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and throw these onto the skillet and just spread them out as evenly as possible. So I'll show you here. You can see, even in my giant skillet, 2 sweet potatoes takes up a lot of room. So I'm just shaking them around, getting them in contact with them. And then we're going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and sprinkle it over the top to give them a little bit of flavor. And then I'll just shake that around again, help that salt get in contact with all the different. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give that about 5 to 7 minutes to cook to begin with. And what we're looking for in that 5 to 7 minute time is for pieces of the sweet potato to start to brown and get a little crispy. But we want the potato overall to begin to soften and get tender. That's the most important part. Potatoes are pretty hard and starchy up front. You don't really want to bite into that. You need to cook it to be able to enjoy it. So we're going to give it 5 to 7 minutes. It may vary depending on where you put that heat exactly on your stovetop. But we'll stir it periodically, flip some pieces, check in on them, and just see how things are going. In the meantime, let's talk about some of the other ingredients that we are going to be including in this. So I'm going to actually chop a couple tomatoes while we're here waiting on that. So you're going to use 1/2 cup of cherry or grape tomatoes, up to you. You can choose to halve them or quarter them, whatever is your preference. I'm just going to be cutting them in half here for simplicity. Now, I've talked about tomatoes a lot on this program because they are so good for you. They are an excellent source of a number of vitamins and minerals, but what I like to talk most about is their lycopene content, which is an antioxidant which has some cancer preventative and cancer fighting properties. So it's really nice to have these in your diet because they're really helpful for that. And they're also a great source of fiber and other things too. So we've chopped up about half a cup of those. We'll move those over here to the side. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to use maybe 2 to 3 just green onion, and we're going to chop those really thinly sliced. We don't want super big pieces because we're just going to sprinkle it on top at the end. So I've gone ahead and rinsed them. I've cut the white bulb part off, and you can usually group a couple of these up. You might even be able to do all of them at once if you want, but curl those fingertips again and just make those thin slices as we move along the green onion. So I can hear the sweet potatoes sizzling behind me. That's always a really good sound. So I know they're getting nice and warm. And in just a second, we'll go over there and just give them a little stir so that they're cooking evenly on all sides. If you leave them right in place, you'll get a really darkly brown bottom side, and then the rest of it may not be cooked all the way through. So we want to give them some equal attention to all sides. Okay, so we've got our green onions chopped up. Nutritionally, these don't contribute a whole lot. We don't have a significant amount going in, but they do have some water and fiber in them, and they're mostly just going to be for flavor and a nice visual pop to have that green on top of there. So let's give those sweet potatoes a quick stir. And we'll let those continue to cook. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare our avocado. So we are adding some healthy fats to this recipe in the form of an avocado. There's no better way to add healthy fats than to use one of these things. So I love using them. When you pick them out at the grocery store, it's kind of tricky because you want them to be ripe whenever it's time to use them. It's like bananas where you get them too early and you may be stuck waiting on them. You get them too late and they may be kind of mushy. So what I look for is I want them to have a little bit of firmness to them, but you should feel just a little bit of give when you press on them with your finger. So if it goes in really easily, that's super mushy and probably past what we want. But you want that nice firmness. It shouldn't feel like a rock, but a little bit of give behind it. What I do is I locate the stem here, this little circular part, and inside of it, you've got the pit or the core of it. You will not be able to cut through that. So take the knife and gently press it in. You'll find resistance when you find that pit, and then just carefully rotate the avocado, continuing to press in with the knife, and you're sort of cutting around the center there with that pit. If the avocado is nice and ripe after you've gone all the way around, you should be able to pull it apart just like that. So this is a perfect avocado. That's exactly what we're looking for. At this point, you've got your pit inside. You can try to scoop it out. A lot of times I'll just take the knife and slam it in like that and then twist. It did not actually work. So usually you can put the knife in there and twist and that'll pop out. This actually cut through. I just sharpened my knife, so it may be a little strong right now. This actually cut through that pit a little bit. So I'll just take a spoon and get it out in a moment. What you're going to do with these avocado halves, though, is we want to chop them up. So using a spoon, we're going to slide in between the skin and the meat, if you will, of the avocado. And we're going to slowly move around and separate that skin. You're kind of scooping it out. And you can make your way around. And so what makes the avocado a healthy fat is that it is higher in unsaturated fats, which are good for our heart, and lower in these saturated fats, which are not quite as good for heart health. So that's where that heart health claim comes from. So you can see I separated the skin there. Then I will flip this over and we'll just sort of dice it. So I'll run the knife through. And if you want to use like the wedges or the slices like this, I know that's trendy for some restaurants to just set that on top. Personally, I prefer for it to be a little more evenly diced into sort of a bite size. So that's what I'm going to do is turn it perpendicular and run the knife through in the other direction. All right, so let's turn our attention here. We're going to do the same thing. First, I'm going to see if I can scoop this pit out since the knife trick didn't work. There we go. So you can see that that pops right out, no problem. And then we'll slide in here, repeating that process, delicately going around to get the skin off so that we can separate things. And sometimes when you do this, you might get part of the skin off and then it might break and you may have some skin sticking to the avocado still. That's no big deal. You can just use your spoon or your hand to sort of peel it away. Your hand will get a little slimy from the avocado, but no worries. So now we'll repeat that same process, cutting in this direction, turning 90 degrees, and then making those perpendicular cuts to get sort of a dice or a chop here. Okay, so we've got some healthy fats lined up. I'm going to wipe my hand on this towel because I do have some avocado on it now. And then let's check on our sweet potato friends, see how they're doing. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to show you something. Hang on just a second. All right, I don't want to pick it up with my hand because it's pretty hot. So hopefully you can see the bottom side of that sweet potato is nice and brown. The back side is still that orange color. So this is a good opportunity to flip, make sure that one piece is not getting burned, and just sort of flip them around so that they can cook evenly. So we'll do that now. And you can also check on the tenderness of the sweet potato with a fork. If you've got to really press it in, it's still pretty tough. If it goes in smoothly, that means that it's nice and tender. That's kind of what we're looking for. So it's been about 5 to 7 minutes here. So we can go ahead and add in some additional ingredients to let them heat up with the sweet potato. So the other ingredients we're going to be using today to combine with it, we're going to use 1 cup of corn. So I just did some no salt added canned corn, trying to keep the sodium a little bit lower in the dish. And then we're going to do a cup of your favorite kind of beans. Black beans or pinto beans are great choices. I'm using my favorite tri-bean blend, which is a mix of black beans, pinto beans, and kidney beans. So we'll add a cup of each of these to there, let it sort of heat up with the sweet potato. The corn's going to add some additional carbohydrates, some extra vitamins and minerals, and the beans are going to add some fiber, but they're also going to be one of our protein sources for this dish. So this is going to help us turn it from an appetizer into a bit more of a meal. So let's throw those in. And then go ahead and give it a stir again. So we're going to let that heat up for maybe 1 to 2 minutes. We're not really needing to cook the beans or the corn. They're already ready to go. We're mostly just trying to get them to the same temperature as the sweet potato. And then at the very end, we'll put a half a cup of cheese. I'm using Mexican cheese over it. It'll sort of melt in with the heat and add a nice cheesy, gooey flavor to everything too. So we'll get that ready here. And then the other component that we're going to work on is we are going to quickly make sort of a sour cream substitute. We're using Greek yogurt. This is very simple. It's a little bit of plain Greek yogurt, a little bit of lime juice, and then just a pinch of salt. And we'll sort of drizzle that on top of everything at the end to give it a little bit of extra flavor. Let's go ahead and add in our cheese now. I'm going to turn the heat off after I add it in because it'll melt from the heat that's already in there, and then we'll get that ready. Okay. So again, we're using plain Greek yogurt. Now you can choose to use low-fat Greek yogurt, fat-free Greek yogurt, whole milk Greek yogurt. We're only using about 2 tablespoons of it, so it's not going to make too big of a difference. So I'm going to scoop in roughly 2 tablespoons. Again, not a whole lot. And Greek yogurt is a great sour cream substitute. It's got that cooling effect to it. But it has a lot more protein in it, so that's why I like to use it. A tablespoon of lime juice, and then just a little pinch of salt. And we'll stir that around. And the lime juice will help make this a little more liquidy, almost more like a dressing, rather than the normal thickness that sour cream or Greek yogurt would have. And you can sort of see that here. You'll see it more when I pour it on the dish at the very end. Okay. So I'm going to actually just move the skillet over here to this cooking station, or this workstation. So hopefully you can see that cheese melting on top, that steam coming off. It's looking really good. We've got most of our sweet potato pieces. I'm just going to grab one with my hand here. Nicely browned. That's what we're looking for. They are tender as well. If you take a fork and try to stick into them, they're soft and they give, which is exactly what we want, so that when we bite into them, they're tasty. You can definitely pick these up and eat them as they are. If you want crispier fries, you can cook them a little bit longer, or potentially try to use an air fryer at one phase before adding everything into it. But this is sort of meant to be eaten with a fork because we're going to have so many toppings on top of it. It's not quite a handheld food anymore. So at this point, if you want, you can transfer it to a large plate or a large bowl. I'm just going to keep it as a one skillet meal, and we're just going to top things directly on top of here. So let's grab our cherry tomatoes and throw those around. So right now we've got mostly just carbohydrates and a little bit of protein with the beans. We're going to add a lot more vitamins and minerals, and then there's healthy fats. So I'm grabbing the avocado, distributing that. Not to mention we're making this look a lot prettier by adding those extra colors. Now we've got orange, yellow, reds, and greens. And then let's get those green onions in here and sort of sprinkle them around. A little bit of flavor, a little bit of garnish as well. And now we are working with something that looks delicious. Like most of my recipes end up looking like a salad when all's said and done, but that's how we know they're healthy, right? All those rainbows of colors in there. And then the last thing that I'll do is drizzle some of this dressing on there. Since this is in the skillet right now, I'm actually just going to transfer a little bit of it to a serving bowl here. That way it's a little easier to clean my skillet at the end. So I'll scoop some of that up, get some of that avocado. Let me come back and grab some of those tomato pieces, because I definitely want those for when I eat this after the presentation's over. Oh, yeah. So this will make about 4 to 5 servings. Each serving is 300 to 400 calories, so that's why it works well. It's sort of a small meal. It's going to have about 12 grams of protein, which is a little on the lower side for some of the recipes that I do. You can definitely enjoy that. You could potentially pair it with other things, but what I really recommend is if you want to turn it into even more of a meal, I would add maybe a little bit extra beans. We did a cup today, but you could potentially do a cup and a half or 2 cups, which would help bump the protein up. Or this would be really, really good if you enjoy animal foods with some chicken. I think grilled chicken would be phenomenal on top of this. You could even do some ground beef if you wanted to, picking like a lean ground beef, and that would bump up that protein content. It's really balanced in terms of the carbohydrates and fat though, so the protein is the only thing that's a little lacking, but at 12 grams, it's not too bad. So I'll take a little bit of this sour cream lime mixture and sort of drizzle it on top. And we've got our loaded sweet potato fries that we have made into a healthy, balanced meal, which I think is really impressive. So whenever you're thinking about different recipes or different foods, remember a lot of times it's not the food itself. You know, in isolation, any food is just a food. It's how we prepare it, what we combine it with, what our portion sizes are. So we've got healthy carbohydrates coming from the sweet potatoes, the corn, and the beans. We've got a little bit of protein from our cheese, our beans, and our Greek yogurt. And then we've got all sorts of fiber and vitamins and minerals from pretty much everything in this. This is a real fiber powerhouse. All these different veggies mixed together help us a lot. And fiber is really good for a number of things. It can help with our blood sugar control, healthy cholesterol levels, healthy digestion and just regularity. And it can help us feel fuller on less food, which is great if you're trying to maintain a healthy weight or potentially reduce calories a little bit in your diet. So like I said, you'll get about 4 to 5 servings out of this, each serving in about 350 calories, about 12 grams of protein. But I'm going to be sending a copy of the recipe along with the complete nutrition profile, so you can see all the details, see how it might fit into your day. I find this to be absolutely delicious because I am a sucker for anything with a bunch of vegetables and some cheese on top. It holds up pretty well as leftovers too. You can keep it in the fridge in an airtight container for up to 4 days. What I recommend doing is keeping this mixture separate from the dressing if you're not going to eat it all at once, just because that'll help with the texture a little bit. And then before you serve it, you can put a little bit of that dressing on top and enjoy it. You can definitely eat it cold as a leftover. It's still good. but I think it's best if you microwave it, or ideally, if you've got a little skillet and want to just heat up a small serving briefly, that'll make it extra tasty whenever you cook it. In terms of substitutions, you know, the sweet potatoes are the base of this, but I talked about protein options like lean ground beef or ground turkey, doing some grilled chicken to bump things up a little bit. If you don't eat cheese or you don't do dairy in general, trying to substitute that with either a vegan cheese or maybe a plant-based sour cream substitute, that could help. But even if you took those out, this would still be a good dish. You could maybe just bump up the avocado a little bit to add more of that fat back into it, since you'll lose some from taking the cheese away. And in terms of vegetables, there's a vegetable here that you're not crazy about. Take it out, pop in something else. Bell peppers would be really good chopped up into this, and they would cook nicely as well. You could put them on at the end to keep them crunchy, or if you wanted to soften them a little bit, throw them in with the beans and corn. They'll heat up and get a little tender along with everything else, which I think would be really nice. So I'm going to check out the comments here, see if we have any questions or anything. Let's see. Oh, so there's a question about how much oil. So again, when we send out the recipe, I know I went through some of that fast. All of those steps will be included. We started off with 2 tablespoons of the cooking oil of your choice in that skillet. So that's 2 tablespoons. It gives us enough to cook all, 2 sweet potatoes in there, because that is a lot of volume of food. Adds that nice flavor to it, but we're not doing it super heavy. We're not trying to deep fry these fries. We just want enough to have them cook. Ways to add fat if I'm allergic to avocado. Great question. So if you're allergic to avocado, or maybe you just don't like avocados, or that, maybe you're having trouble finding one that's right, there are a number of different ways that we can add healthy fats to this, or just add fats in general to it. So I mentioned that the Greek yogurt that I use, the plain Greek yogurt as a sour cream substitute, I'm actually using whole milk Greek yogurt today, which is significantly higher in fat than the fat-free one would be, of course. So if you're taking out the avocado, you can certainly use a whole milk yogurt, which will be richer and creamier, and you're sort of balancing it because you're reducing the calories from removing the avocado, and then you could do maybe a little more of the sour cream mix on top. Same idea with the cheese. I wouldn't recommend going too heavy with the cheese just due to the sodium content of it, but you could bump the cheese up a little bit if you took out the avocado. So those are some simple suggestions there, just to kind of think about, well, what other fats could we bring in and remove out? Alternatively, if you don't have a lot of fat in the meal itself, you can always supplement with something on the side that has fat in it. Maybe you enjoy this and then you have like a small snack of almonds or something like that. It doesn't all have to be in the same dish, but just think about the big picture of throughout your day, are you getting a combination of those different things? Okay, so this one's saying their husband's not a fan of Greek yogurt. Would sour cream substitute well in the sauce? Yeah, absolutely. So the Greek yogurt we're using as a sour cream substitute already. I just like it because it's got more protein content, which this recipe was lacking in a little bit. So if you want to just use sour cream, keep everything else the same. Same amount of sour cream, that lime juice, just a pinch of salt, and you'll get the same consistency that you'll be able to top things with. So that'll work really well. Know that the protein content will go down just a little bit because of that swap, but that may give you the opportunity to think of some other additions or food combinations to enjoy with it. Oh, okay, so here's a question. Is the amount you have in your dish the amount you would consider for a meal? So I'm really glad you asked that. When I plate these on the presentation, I'm kind of just doing an arbitrary amount, not really looking at it super carefully. I mentioned that it divides into about 4 to 5 servings. This, I would say, is slightly smaller than what I would serve for that like 350 calorie amount. It should be 1/4 of the total recipe, and I think I really only grabbed about 1/5 here. So you could bump that up a little bit to get more in there. It can be a little deceptive though, where some of the calories are coming from. Avocados are very dense, so while it doesn't look like there's a lot of calories in there, when you add those avocado pieces in, they do add up fairly quickly compared to some of the other foods. But yeah, to answer your question, I would make that portion a little bit bigger. If you're meal prepping, after you cook this, get 4 containers and try to divide this evenly into those 4 containers, and that'll give you the best idea of that roughly 350 calorie serving size. Great question though. Okay, and then just some comments about how it looks delicious, which I agree, and I promise you it is when I tested this recipe earlier this week. My roommate and I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to hearing what people try, if they do any substitutes or kind of mix-ups. And as always, I love to hear people's feedback on if they like the recipe, if they end up making it at home. So keep an eye out in your email. You're going to get the recipe and the nutrition label. You're going to get a link to a recording of a video, and then you're going to get a link to a short survey. It takes about 2 minutes to do, and you can let us know what you thought of today's session. If you've got ideas, any constructive criticism, things we could do in the future to make it a better program and a more enjoyable program for you. So if you've got the time, please keep an eye out for that email and fill out that survey. You should be getting the survey probably either Friday or Monday. Sometimes it takes us a little bit to get it out, so keep an eye out for that. We really appreciate the feedback. Additionally, if you are interested in getting on our mailing list, we do events like this all the time. We do 2 cooking demonstrations every month. And I mentioned earlier, we also have stretch breaks, yoga, meditation, our snack and share support group, all sorts of great content that we try to do. So if you'd like to be on that mailing list, you can email me at rsmith250@gsu.edu, and we'll put that in the chat here in just a moment. If you shoot me an email, we'll get you on our mailing list. Each Monday, we send out a newsletter just letting people know, hey, here's what we're going to be doing this week. We hope you can check it out. And speaking of, tomorrow's Friday, and at noon, we are going to be hosting online our guided meditation and chair yoga session. It'll be from 12 until 1:30. You don't have to be there the whole time. Feel free to drop in and out whenever it's convenient for your schedule. But if you're interested in wrapping up the week with some nice meditation or a little bit of chair yoga, we encourage you to check that out. Those events are on the GSU web calendar as well as the USG events calendar. And I see Cheryl just put my email in the chat. Thank you, Cheryl. So again, if you're interested in joining that mailing list, shoot me a quick email and we'll get you on there. So we're a little over time today, but I appreciate everyone sticking around and tuning in. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again soon at one of our events. Thank you.